Okay, so I would now like to introduce Stephen. I'm going to put him up here on the spotlight for everybody. Stephen is calls himself a land artist, and I think that's really true. He has such an artistic amount to him. And he has a bachelor in landscape architecture from the University of Oregon and is a licensed landscape contractor. And he has a company called Fertile Ground. And he's been creating lovely healing spaces for private and public clients for 30 years. He's a builder of labyrinths for the past 15, and most recently, he's really building only labyrinths. He's built labyrinths in churches, libraries, rehabilitation centers, plazas, retreat centers, and private properties. He lives up in the the foothills of the Oregon Cascades in Estacada. And he's had his own quite important life journey with the labyrinth, which he's going to share with us. He served as a founding member of Labyrinth Network Northwest in their planning circle from 2007 to 2011. He chaired the first Labyrinth Society meeting on the West Coast, and then was on the board of the Labyrinth Society for 4 years, starting in 2011. It's really a pleasure that Stephen's going to speak to us tonight. And I'm certainly looking forward to it. And without further ado, I'm going to let Stephen speak.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Patricia. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. It's an honor. And yeah, thank you all for attending. Everyone here has some curiosity and hopefully a little bit of the pull of the labyrinth, so that we can have a wonderful evening together exploring my particular journey with and through various forms of the labyrinth.
The earliest formative years of my childhood were in Appleton, Wisconsin. And my parents told me that when I was old enough to ride a tricycle, all I wanted to do was to practice backing it up and parking it over and over again. And so that was my MO. At an early age, I was fixated on slowing down, looking around to where I wanted to go. I imagined myself backing up on a perfect arc into that center space of blissful, satisfying pause. Imagine if I had found a labyrinth to ride my tricycle through as a child. Maybe I already was. Clearly, I was all about the meanders. It was not about straight lines, nor the one just to careen forward down any unknown hill. I was at home, grounded and grounding, perfectly held in the container that was my imaginary parking space. So how did the labyrinth find me? Well, it was 20 years ago when my mom gifted me Lauren Artrus's book, Walking a Sacred Path. Little did I know at the time that the labyrinth would become a roadmap, a guide and companion for a very difficult journey that I could not see coming. You know, the crushing blow to the world as we know it. It was just still out of sight around one of those never-ending turns down the path a little bit further. 5 years of exploring and playing with the labyrinth's varied forms captured my imagination. Then, towards the end of 2005, my partner of 18 years turned in a different direction on life's labyrinth, so to speak, and began walking away from the life we had been building together. Sad, scared, hurt, and angry, I cut a labyrinth into the backyard lawn. You can see in this image here, I used my power edger to cut a line right into the grass, and then I used the weed eater to scalp and expose that cut line, and that was the labyrinth that I walked I instinctively began walking this labyrinth and did so every day for a year. Talk about a lifesaver. My first garden labyrinth invited me into liminal space and time. My daily mantra became, breathe in today, breathe out or let go of yesterday. Each day is a gift. It is all we ever have. The transformation that occurred in me from this newfound daily practice of letting go, trusting the process, and eventual gratitude, along with tapping into a plethora of additional healing modalities. The labyrinth taught me what it really means to love and let go. The shifts that occurred in me on the labyrinth were often subtle and sometimes quite jolting, and clearly filled with many aha moments. From this newfound practice, an unwavering trust in life's path emerged. Gratitude, compassion, and renewed creativity were discovered as well. I would come to design and build labyrinths in many different settings for peoples of all walks of life, so that they too might be afforded a safe space to journey inward and rediscover their center. From my perspective, this also happened to a landscape architect's dream awakening. It was my emerging pulse of creativity. And now my forward button is stuck. Unbelievable. Sorry, folks. Trying to hit escape so I can, there we go. The pulse of creativity. This is my youngest daughter, Micah, holding a box of hundreds and hundreds of LED tea lights that were be laid out on this labyrinth in the backyard for one of our winter solstice lighted labyrinth walks. So 2006 to 2010, bring on the wisdom and healing out of all of this pain. So there's 4 labyrinths, a bulb labyrinth, still having trouble with my advancing cursor for some reason. Sorry, folks, really didn't have any issues with this. So I'm going to just step out of there for a second and go back in and hope that that clears it up. The Earth Mother Labyrinth, which also happens to be my company logo. The 4 Seasons Labyrinth, as I call it, and the Unity Labyrinth. The Bulb Labyrinth emphasizes that we are but a moment in time. So the learning from this project was really about just plant something. You got to remind yourself of greater forces at work in the world. Of course, the bulb is a perfect opportunity to see that in practice. Sorry, once again, it's not advancing. I wonder if I should close out of the keynote and reopen the keynote.
Yeah, I would go all the way out of it and then come back in.
Right, I had quit keynote all the way. And so now I'm going to just try to go back into that. And In addition to the miracle of a bulb's growth and bloom, we see nature having the final say. So does technology, I guess. Time changes things.
So Stephen,
And
it's not on yet.
oh, really? Wow. I have it in front of me.
Oh, share screen.
Oh, I got to share the screen again because we bumped out of that. Thank you for keeping me on. Okay, everybody have that?
Yep, we have it now.
Time changes things, nurture and caretaking make a difference. This is an 11 circuit chart labyrinth with bulbs for the lines and pebbles and the gravel path. And unbelievable. Still not advancing anymore. Well, I'm at a loss since we've canceled everything out.
Stephen, since
Yep.
there's so many multiple things that aren't working here, I wonder if you should actually leave the meeting and come back in and let's just see if everything works better.
Okay. So it says I'm disabled in terms of screen sharing. Patricia, you're muted. I saw you trying to speak, but you're muted.
Okay, so we don't have you. Are you back in? I don't see.
Yeah, get him,
Yeah.
make him a co-host.
Okay, where is he? Okay, now you're co-hosted. Okay,
Okay. Yeah, it still doesn't do a thing. Don't understand what in the world could be causing that to freeze.
so Stephen, Jan is thinking that you might need to actually reboot your computer.
It may take a while, but he
Well.
could send someone else.
Does anybody else have any ideas? I'm just not a great computer person here.
Well, he could send a copy of his PowerPoint to someone else
Oh,
to run the.
So if you could send it to me, Stephen, I could try to play. I could play it.
All right.
Stephen, does it
And the
work
other
if
way-
you keep it? Does it work if you keep it in this view that you have up right now, where we
That-
can see the slides on the side?
We're going to find out. So as soon as I click play, let's see. So how else can I do that? I guess I would have to just scroll over here and then select the next
Yep.
That might work.
So, all right, well, let's see whether this will work or not. It's less desirable, but sometimes that's life. This picture with my cursor on it is the 11th circuit, and it was meant to illustrate the passing of time in that shade grows up from the forest around. Some of the bulbs die out because it's too shady. The critters both below the ground and above the ground forage on the bulbs. So it's important that you understand that when you plant a living labyrinth, that it will evolve, and that nurture and care and nature will have its way. The Earth Mother Labyrinth design that I came up with for my company logo is about the journey within. I'm going to read you a short passage about the symbolism of that design. As we walk the unicrystal path of this labyrinth, we become the creative blood pulsating throughout our Great Mother's veins, traversing all the extremities of her powerful yet gently cradling, curvaceous body. Our life forces join as we are drawn into the comfort of the central womb. Because we are all artists at birth, this center room invites us to pause, to replenish, and reawaken our inner creative force. This journey can nourish and inspire the creator in all of us. While we may dance, sing, mourn, weep, breathe, glimpse, or just be still within the Earth Mother's embrace, we are fed, we are grounded, and healing begins. We gain strength and courage once again to let go of fear, to boldly walk our uniquely own creative path. The lessons here are that creativity is available in every moment. New beginnings are inevitable, and it's a process. Gestation, growth, birth, and death of all things. Dormancy, or the pregnant pause, if you will, nourishes that which is yet to be born. This is an image of the full design in the upper left corner there of the Earth Mother, and you walk in down here at the bottom. In the four quadrants are little pausing spaces along the route to the center. The slide below that image is where I've painted it onto the ground in our orchard in the back of the property. I used leftover pavers that I lined up on the painted lines in order to create and delineate the path, which was to be ground cover. So you'd walk in on ground cover. That didn't quite finish. And then this picture on the right illustrates that Mother Nature does have her way. This is the labyrinth, which means the ground is covered with wildflowers and weeds and grasses. You do not see this labyrinth at all, with the exception of this bulb that is a fall crocus, which I planted some years ago in that central womb. So that emerges every year to remind me that the Earth Mother is there, just lying dormant. This Four Seasons Labyrinth is about embracing life seasons. So if you follow the path in this orange labyrinth image, I'm going to read you a little passage about that experience. Stepping onto this labyrinth has one immediately circumnavigating its perimeter, a collective embrace or hug, if you will, of the cyclical nature of our life in relation to the seasons. You are moving towards the spring quadrant. This is a season of renewal and reawakening, filled with learning and opportunity at every turn. Walk then into summer's quadrant. You begin to fill yourself with vitality, warmth, and light. Summer is a season of celebration and fulfillment. As you enter the quadrant of fall, You feel the transition beginning. You take stock in your bounty. Fall is about survival. It can also be about scarcity and decline. Winter's quadrant gives way to dormancy. We are especially quiet in this time. Winter is a season for reflection, for hibernation and planning. We then immediately enter the safe cocoon that is the labyrinth's center space. It is here we are asked to sit with ourselves and be still. This cocooning provides the necessary time and space for transformation to take hold. You are asked to quiet the mind and go deep within, so that upon emergence from this state, you go out into the world renewed and reawakened. Thus, the cycles begin again and becomes your friend with practice. The lessons here are throughout our lives, we go through many seasons of birth to death and back to birth again. And you need to trust in that cyclical nature of living this one brilliant life. The image on the left is the first manifestation of that design at our new public library in Estacada some years ago, off of the community room. Those 4 or 5 big window doors there are an accordion door, and they open up all the way so that that interior space opens up and flows onto the labyrinth. The images on the right side are a recent expression of that design at Franciscan Spiritual Center in Milwaukee, Oregon. And you can see I drew the labyrinth on the lawn canvas and then cut and removed the sawed snakes, if you will, and then inserted the pavers. My youngest daughter, Micah, helped me on this project, and it was a wonderful build together with her. The Unity Labyrinth is about walking together. I had the honor to design this labyrinth for a dear friend who wanted to be able to get married on it with her partner. And so in Paula's words, she indicated that sacred geometry was important, and that the geometry of 5 is very appealing to me. With an overlay of 4 feels even better, she says. I like to have the stability of the 4 directions, 4 seasons, the intersection of spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, yin and yang. The 5 appeals because it's so transformative and has such movement to it. I also like the circle as the container and love the Vesica Pisces as the center shape. So you can see the 4 directions and the 7 chakras up through here, with that center chakra being the heart, which stands for love and balance, where the 2 paths come together and join in that center space. It is a conscious decision to walk together in the same direction. That's what partnership is. And to stay grounded and in balance takes practice. And harmony is possible. This upper left picture is Paula and I. We're laying out this labyrinth in her lawn. With any contemporary design, you almost always need to lay a grid on the ground. So here we have string and bamboo stakes. And then I'm using yellow flags to mark the center line of what will be the path. And so on the photo on the right, that's just after we mowed it. Paula walked in front, pulling all the flags out after we had removed the grid, of course. And I followed along with the mower to mow that first cut in the lawn. And we had planted those brick pavers for the chakras and the center space and the 4 directions. And then this lower right photo illustrates what it looks like after much careful, regular weekly manicuring, because it is a mown labyrinth. So without the weekly mowing, you would lose the path. It was a beautiful ceremony and a beautiful labyrinth that met their needs and provided additional healing for me. So the final distillation of all that pain, what I learned is to trust. Like that bulb, the miracle of a bulb, that someday it's going to come out of this shriveled little thing after being underground, and it's going to bloom and be beautiful again. You are safely held, and transformation happens, and balance is possible. So that first little section, there was certainly reoccurring themes in terms of how those labyrinths helped me along my journey in order to find balance and find a way forward. So let's take a quick little moment here to stretch, stand, breathe, blink, whatever you need to do. Shake out this, I got to shake out this technology, whatever you want to call it. Challenge. Let's just call it a challenge. It was fun to find this comic online from the awkwardyeti.com. And I thought it was interesting when I looked at that for a while, and I realized, oh yeah, this is interesting. The brain is on the step, talking to the heart. It's just got to be one painstaking step at a time, and the heart's up there pumping away, saying, "What? Can't hear you. I'm really working hard." And so that reminded me that
Sorry, did I get muted?
So now you froze a little bit, and now we can't hear you again. Yeah, you're muted now, Stephen.
Your phone is muted.
I think something is muted.
Your phone is muted.
So Stephen, we can't hear you here.
Patricia, if you send him a request to unmute on his phone,
Mhm.
that should do it. Oh, is he calling back? Maybe.
He's calling back to get in.
No, there's nothing.
And his computer. I'm hearing someone else.
okay. Am I unmuted now?
Yes. We can now
I
hear
don't know
you.
how that happened. I didn't touch my phone, but somehow it got muted.
It's one of the great things of life.
Lovely. Shall I continue?
Yep.
So this brain talking to the heart can't hear about this painstaking step at a time because it's working so hard, thumping up there, right? So I thought, oh, okay. Maybe it's a reminder, it's not a race. So I'll read this to you. This is a poem that I wrote after I had an episode of AFib, with my heart just before a trip where I was supposed to go to Pearlstone and build a labyrinth at a pre-gathering workshop with Lisa Moriarty back in 2019. And instead, I landed in the emergency room and with a little stint in the hospital. And needless to say, that was better than getting on a plane. So as my heart recovered from this crazy random episode, I captured my experience in this poem. In the flow of ever-present tasks, I make ready for my journey. Tired and empty, I'm pushed through a blackout hole, spiraling into the never, never land of the unconscious. In a beat, AFib takes me on a journey of the heart. Going nowhere, I run a metaphorical marathon, while being lovingly poked and prodded, scanned and wired, drugged and monitored. A heart's labyrinth knows no shortcuts. I am forced to embrace this erratic flow, breathing through this broken melody. My heart's knowing beckons me back to the sacred dance. You converted, they joyously shout. The beat goes on with a grateful and even cadence of one foot in front of the other. Committed to the path. So this next period of time, there's more learning with every new turn on the path. There'll be less talking points and more images to enjoy. This first Airbnb labyrinth was a client of mine that had Parkinson's. And so part of the motto for Parkinson's is to keep moving so you don't get stuck. You got to keep moving those muscles. And so she wanted a labyrinth in her backyard that would allow her to just do that. And she also wanted some different textures on the path. So some of the path you can see is smooth with a brighter terracotta color, and then some is an exposed aggregate with some smooth, larger pebbles at the surface. We'd like to be able to walk this barefoot and feel different textures underfoot. The top two images here are during the construction phase. You can see the elaborate formwork and the placement of some of the larger boulders and the poured concrete in this nice classical 5-circuit labyrinth. And then the lower two pictures show the finished labyrinth coming off of the beautiful deck and from the house out into this garden oasis. Forest Home Woodlands Labyrinth. This happens to be on our family lands. I built this with the help of some family and friends for my mom for her 80th birthday. And this is all about gathering and family. We have been stewarding this land since 1863. And being grounded in this land and caring for this land for so many generations, we wanted to be able to celebrate the forest and the products of this working forest. And so I utilized alder and hemlock and maple and cedar and Douglas fir in the making of this labyrinth. Here are pictures. This upper left is recently this fall, after my youngest daughter, Micah's boyfriend, helped to reset some of the logs that had rotted away in the line work. So you can see some fresh placement of logs and the beautiful 5-circuit classical in the forest edge. Over here, my mom and I are walking on a winter solstice, and then the lower right, of course, is a beautiful snowfall, and the other lower right image is the springtime lush greens. It's a beautiful setting, a wonderful space for family to gather and ground. This is in Camas, Washington. I call it the Camas Labyrinth. It's quite large, a 57-foot diameter. And some of the learning here is really that everyone's sacred ground is unique. There's such a variety of forms, patterns and materials and scale with each client and their particular setting. I like to think of it as their particular terroir, which the wine industry uses to describe a particular type of soil and topography, exposure and climate. I think it's the same with people and their life experiences and where they live and grow and are grounded. And so this was a beautiful setting. The upper left photo shows after the compacted gravel was placed, we then had to excavate that and carefully, and then eventually fill that in with drip irrigation and soil. And then all the plants are laid out over here on the upper right photo as we begin to plant. The line work where the plants are about 1 foot wide and the path is 24 inches wide. The client then eventually found this beautiful earth goddess sculpture, which she placed over here in the altar space, the space that is set off on axis with the center as you enter. The bird head labyrinth, as I call it, this is a very unique setting. So listen, adapt, respond, and bend. Very tight quarters in an urban backyard. There's a beautiful dogwood tree in this area that was filled with weeds and some neglected lawn. So they wanted to put in a labyrinth. And so we thought, well, how do we do that? Well, we had to get creative. And I'm going to see if it'll let me play for a moment and actually change the slide here. It's a bird head shape for this particular labyrinth. Can you see that there? Here comes the bird head in that position, with the eye being the center at the base of the tree. A woman named Beverly Two Feathers Owens, who wrote in the Woodpecker as an animal spirit guide. She wrote about a woodpecker. Basically, a woodpecker is a symbol of the rhythm of life and of discrimination. We should find our own beats of the drum to follow in our journey and do what is best for ourselves and not what others might tell us to peck at. Woodpecker comes with the message that you have the foundation and it is now safe for you to follow your own rhythms. And here's an image of the construction of that labyrinth where sod was removed, soil was placed, stones were planted, and eventually you have this beautiful entrance into a 3-circuit contemporary design in the shape of a bird's head. Since this is working for a moment, we're going to stay with the slideshow. More small space labyrinths. So that's about finding a way. This is a very small labyrinth. The form work was quite intricate that I was happy I didn't have to do anything with the pouring of the concrete. I just did the form work. This Jaff construction concrete contractors I found were a great team and knew exactly what they needed to do to get this poured. And here's the finished labyrinth. Again, a sweet little 3-circuit in a very small urban backyard. Again, the planted lines have drip irrigation, soil amendments, and plants that will grow out and become this dwarf ground cover that highlights the labyrinth. These bottom 2 photos are of a unique project. A hot tub used to sit in this area. It's only about 12 foot across from the fence to the deck. The deck will be rebuilt, and it's about 19 feet wide, so it's kind of an oval or egg shape. And this was paver and aggregate. The aggregate was an open aggregate, which means it had no fines. so that I could pour this clingstone. Clingstone is a product that is a polymer binder, and it basically solidifies the aggregate but allows water to move through it, so it's permeable. That is a very fun and interesting way to be able to get a labyrinth in a unique small space. Here is a stone labyrinth. This happens to be Patricia's that she had mentioned. I built a labyrinth for her this summer with the help of a wonderful worker, Matt Berger. Trust the process, everything has its place. So take a look around, there's stones just laid out around the outer edge of this project. Out by the yellow bucket there on the left-hand side of the photo is a partially emptied basket on a pallet. There were 3 palleted baskets of stone, over 6 tons of stone that were all individually handled and placed and planted. So there it's coming along. Every stone is finding its home. There's still a lot of stones out there around the perimeter you can see in the back of that photo. And then eventually we found places for almost all of those stones. The lunations around the outer circuits are implied by the bigger, alternating bigger and smaller stones. They also look like rays of the sun. And believe it or not, we now, of course, are going to have a stuck cursor. So we're going to jump out. This little slide in the lower right corner is all that was left of the 6 ton of stone after that project was complete. So that was definitely about trusting the process, and everything does have a place. Paver labyrinths. We're going to continue on the trust the process theme for a minute and keep your center. So in this photo, you can see right in the middle, I have a stake and a tape measure that's wound up next to my paver mallet. This is a paver kit that is being constructed, and so there are these board sections that are placeholders as you build the kit out. You have to be really careful to hold your center and measure constantly as you are adding concentric circles of pavers, because it doesn't take much before your circle can morph and become an egg shape, and that can be problematic if you already have a constrained edge or border around the outside. So this photo in the upper left is the completed labyrinth that that first picture was from. This is a little paver labyrinth kit from David Tolzman's Labyrinth Company. That is a little 5-circuit labyrinth that I attached to an existing brick paver patio. The one on the right is at a gardens and a Catholic monastery and gardens in Portland called the Grotto. This was a full 11-circuit chart kit, 39 foot, and the exposed aggregate sidewalk that was all the way around it was already pre-poured. So that one was all about keeping your center, because you couldn't afford to have that change shape. It had to be a circle in order to fit within that those boundaries. The lower 2 photos, the one on the left is at a drug and alcohol rehab facility in Newberg, Oregon. Part of a 12-step program, series of 12 garden respites out on their property that a trail connected, and the labyrinth was one of those steps. And these were custom labyrinth designs, not from a kit that I designed and constructed. The one in the lower right is from a city hall in Happy Valley, Oregon. Speaking of the City Hall Labyrinth project, so there was some recent learning about expanding and evolving. So this is an image of the labyrinth just after it was constructed, a nice little drone image to show how it sat there. The city wanted to have a plaza where they could have a tree that they would light during the holidays. So that's why you have a center space filled with a planter and a tree. And so that's how they used it for some years. And then they decided that they wanted to add to their park the element of a veterans memorial. So I worked with the city and Veterans Group and Arts Commission, and we master planned an expansion of the park that it would include a Veterans Memorial component adjacent to the Labyrinth. And so these next photos illustrate that completion of phase 2. So now you see there's a beautiful hardscape around that Labyrinth with some seat walls in the background here on this upper left photo. And the bottom photo and the one on the right face the other direction, where you can see part of the Veterans Memorial component has some columnar flowering pear trees centered behind benches that are at the base of each of the military branch flag poles. And there'll be some more opportunities for art and further park development in phase 3. But this has evolved into and expanded into being able to serve a variety of needs so that people can not only enjoy it for celebrations, but also for remembrance and contemplations. Community-built labyrinths. Back to this photo for just a minute, because teamwork strengthens common bonds. That's a big learning. This group, they each had a task. They each had a focus on what they were to do in order to make this come together beautifully as they did. And so teamwork is important, everybody on the same page. Lisa Moriarty and I at a Labyrinth Society gathering, Bainbridge Island, a place called Islandwood. We were artists in residence for the week before the gathering and had the honor and pleasure of working with Seattle area students that came across for a 2-day outdoor school experience where they were learning about labyrinths, about the flora and fauna on the island. So we used pencils with the students. They got to stamp leaves from the forest onto this canvas labyrinth. This was Lisa's Harmony Labyrinth, a dual path conflict resolution pattern that they got to learn how to problem solve, work out differences. And by the end of the week, with different schools and children participating, we had this beautiful shaped canvas labyrinth that fit right into a forest treehouse gathering space on the property. These next series of slides, the top 2 are in our local community of Estacada. Each year there's an art and music festival, and I volunteer to chalk out labyrinths in the intersection, and then volunteers will come and paint in the lines. This is using tempera paints, so it lasts through the summer and then fades out over time. The bottom 2 photos are from a church on the Oregon coast where church members, community members worked with me to lay out and excavate, trench, and plant all these pavers for a beautiful labyrinth that now has been planted with a grass seed in the paths. So it is this paver and lawn labyrinth in this beautiful meadow on their property. The top 2 photos here are a labyrinth workshop that I led at a community-built association gathering in Portland. This was at Mount Tabor Presbyterian Church in Portland, Oregon. And so I had a crew of all generations here helping to dig out and level the base and plant the pavers. And in an afternoon, we had this beautiful classical 7-circuit labyrinth. And finally, the bottom 2 photos are from a family camp, an activity with families where I taught these teenagers how to scratch out a double spiral in a forest clearing. And then we just used our bare hands and piled the forest duff together on the scratched lines, and you have this beautiful double spiral here. So it's fun to work with groups of people And you all have a task, and you all contribute in ways to make that come together. And then the final labyrinth on this little whirlwind tour, I think we're doing fine on time, is the Earth Harmony Labyrinth. This is also about problem solving and gaining perspective. So this is on the school grounds, a local school, grade school in Estacada here in our community. I thought I had protected this with barricades and caution tape so that between layers of painting and colors on the earth, we wouldn't have any problems. Well, in the middle of the night, some mischievous teenagers decided they needed to ride their bikes and skid some marks onto the middle of that. And then I couldn't believe it, but a truck drove across it as well. Vehicles are usually supposed to be locked out of that property with gates, but something must have been left open. So that was interesting to arrive the day that I thought I was going to paint the labyrinth pattern on top of that. And then I had to problem solve and figure out how to clean that and get it dried and ready so that I could paint with the dry weather window that I had. And it all worked out. And here you see the finished labyrinth. This is Lisa's opposite entry harmony labyrinth pattern, which is a beautiful way to invite students to make up games, to again problem solve, resolve conflicts. Obviously on this particular earth pattern, they can also talk about geography and mathematics and writing and art. There's all kinds of learning opportunities in a school setting. You can see that I spun the labyrinth a little bit so that the US was not quite front and center, like you often see on globes or maps. And I like the fact that it was kind of water-centric. After all, the Earth is 71% water and probably growing. I don't even show Antarctica there, partly because I did not have white paint. But it could be a good conversation starter about where's Antarctica. So that is the whirlwind tour of a variety of labyrinths. I am going to take us now through a final short section that will then conclude with some time for Q&A and plenty of time for our closing activity of the finger labyrinth walk with some more questions. So bear with me here. We're going to back up now to my backyard canvas and moving beyond the old ways. So these photos show that lawn canvas that I tried out different patterns and different techniques over the years. That upper left labyrinth here, as I was getting ready to take that photo, Micah, at an early age, my youngest daughter, was walking in there, and she got to the center, sat down her little treat, and started busting out a dance move. So she's a little bit blurry there, but having fun on the labyrinth. And you can see on the bottom two photos, it's a different year. The center space actually has grass, so there's kind of a loop around the center instead of a mowed center. And I let that one grow longer, which I quite liked. That was an intriguing expression. And then I'm going to try again, see if I can jump back into this mode just for the next couple of slides. Right here, I'm mowing one that I've let grow really long, and the center is open, but you can see it takes up some space, valuable lawn in the yard. So Micah and her friends would complain about encroaching on the soccer field there. But we did make use of this at the end of a school year and a big get ready for it 8th grade graduation. So we had a great photo shoot in the middle of the labyrinth while Micah and her best friend were all dressed up. And so a lot of life there on the labyrinth. And now that last photo won't come again. But you can see when I mowed that then later in the fall, we now have a reverse labyrinth where all you see is the green path, and what was the green walls is now mowed away. So this backyard was fun to have as a canvas, and it helped me a lot with understanding my relationship with the labyrinths. My journey has tended to nudge me towards another edge, and it's a creative flux, as I call it, and it's inspired by the path's ever-present and unapologetic flow. So I use this backyard as an artist canvas, and usually they would last 1 or 2 years. And then just prior to remarrying 6 years ago, my best men and I planted a brick labyrinth in the lawn. So that's in the upper right corner. That's now brick 5-circuit labyrinth in the lawn. I decided it was time to commit, trust the path, and trust in deep, lasting relationships and the gifts that they offer. And then you see it there in the snow and another lighted winter solstice. So we quite enjoyed that brick labyrinth for some years. But over the years, the proverbial self-employed work question would always arise. Enough playing around already. I wondered again to myself, can this labyrinth calling sustain me or not? Before the end of 2019, I finally declared to the universe that I would only provide labyrinth-related services from 2020 and beyond. No more general landscape architectural design or construction work. I walked on around that scary bend on life's labyrinthical path. Finally, I committed to a giant leap forward into the unknown. Every day, I am thankful that a steady flow of meaningful labyrinth work continues to find me. My labyrinth clients are a gift, a blessing, and a joy to co-create with. Changing it up, new orientation. So another turning point in 2020 was, of course, COVID. Life as we knew it was turned upside down. So I began getting a strong urge and creative impulse to flip and reorient the backyard labyrinth. I was not walking it as often as I used to. Something had changed. The entrances to the various backyard labyrinths were always from the east. And over the years, I had never changed the entrance orientation, but I began to ask myself, can I flip a labyrinth? Has that ever been done before? Can I really do that? I felt no longer held standing at the east entrance of our labyrinth. I was once again vulnerable as the neighboring property sold and a giant pole barn went up along our eastern fence line. By spinning the labyrinth, we are now held by the arms of a wise old hickory nut tree and the flow of our cedar deck that connects my office to our home. We now look out into the fruited and treed northeast section of our property. So here are some photos of that flipping process where I lightly drew some white lines over the existing labyrinth with the new orientation, then lifted up the old turns and put down new concentric circles on that side, and then develop new turns on the opposite side. And then this photo in the lower right is my sweetie Teresa sitting there contemplating this new orientation. And here is the completed labyrinth after it had been flipped. Over here, you see where the entrance used to be, this little lavender arrow. So after the fact, I also discovered that according to Feng Shui, our labyrinth's new northeast axis is oriented in the direction of knowledge, relaxation, contemplation, and spirituality. I thought, well, how perfect is that? So this leads us to one of my most recent transformative experiences with the Labyrinth, the creation of my developing product line called Looking Glass Labyrinths. So personallabyrinths.com is not live yet, won't be live till sometime next year, but I have that domain secured. And what I wanted to do is continue to make labyrinths more accessible. So I've played with wire and copper tubing and created some interesting labyrinth art to hang in various places. And so this creative exploration of the labyrinth form gave me another aha moment. Of course, I said, if you lift the labyrinth up off the ground, you can now engage the form from a new perspective. You're invited to look at the world through the lens of a labyrinth. This was a brilliant discovery. By looking through a labyrinth, it can become a portal that illuminates profound connections with self and source. We are all connected. We are all on the path together, certainly at different places along the path, but nonetheless together, not separate. What separates us is ego and fear. I believe that labyrinths can help people to understand that we are all connected. When I gaze through one of my looking glass labyrinths, I am reminded that my container of love is large enough for all that is, and that I can make the choice daily to meet the world through the lens of compassion and trust. I'm excited to keep making labyrinths more accessible and affordable across varied abilities and beliefs. So finally, another product is something I'm calling Mat Labs. That's an exciting new line that will personalize interlocking foam tiles for portable personal workout and or meditation spaces. So that's under product development, but I'm having fun with it. So as you can see, I'm energized and excited and continually learning and expanding the ways in which I work with the labyrinth and learn from the labyrinth. So one final metaphor takeaway, if your brain isn't overloaded here. The labyrinth must be an onion of sorts, because there's always another hidden layer to peel back and discover, with the possibility of being overwhelmed to the point of tears, and eventually coming to celebrate the way time simmers and turns a potent experience into a palatable flavoring that brings out other unexpected joys. And I will leave you with my company motto that I developed years ago. May our collective vision be playful enough to be non-threatening and contagious. The paths we create wide enough to carry us all. And may the footprints we leave invite exploration, celebration, and harmony. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That was wonderful. So if you
You're welcome.
if you could stop sharing so we could,
I will do that.
there you go. Great.
Great.
So I think Connie's going to see if there are any questions now. We're going to do a little bit of questions right before we do our experiential time, if there are any questions.
We did put up the poetry website for them to see the poems that you told us, because your voice broke in and out. So we did tell them that. So
Okay.
if you guys want to see the poems that he read at the beginning, you can go to that website.
Yeah, they were excellent. So yeah, really disappointed that the technology gods decided to raise havoc tonight.
Well, I have to say, I really admire your staying grounded through the whole process, because I know how difficult that can be. So congratulations. Well, I really am inspired in how your process is taking you to this whole new third dimension of getting off of the ground. A landscape architect doing something so that you see the labyrinth in the air. I mean, that is really exciting.
Mhm.
So let's see if we have some questions here. Does anybody, oh, we do. Oh, Jamie, do you have a question?
Yes, Stephen, you mentioned accessibility. And one of the things I've noticed about the Chartres labyrinth designs that I'm familiar with is the paths are too narrow for someone with a walker or a wheelchair to navigate. And I wonder if you have experience creating labyrinths that are accessible for people using wheelchairs and walkers.
I have in so far as that most of those labyrinths that are complete hardscapes, even though the pattern and or the width of the path may be narrower than an actual wheelchair or a walker, you, at certain scales, you should still be able to navigate and have access to those labyrinth patterns. It does become problematic and a little bit disorienting if the scale is such that it's too small. So if it's a larger labyrinth, probably at least 30 foot or more, you would be able to navigate a pattern, even though your wheelchair wouldn't fit exactly inside the lines, you can still follow the path.
Mhm.
So I have heard of several labyrinths. I've seen some pictures of some labyrinths that are literally accessible, where that path is probably 40 inches wide, but it takes a lot of ground, like probably 90-foot diameter, to do something at a larger scale. So most often than not, you would have either poured concrete, you would have pavers, you would have a surface that is ADA compliant, and then make sure your pattern was appropriately scaled.
Mhm. Would that, you mentioned some product that you put like gravel down and then pour something in it and it creates a more permeable surface? Because I know that there's a counterbalancing concern about putting a lot of hardscape down on a land that previously was permeable.
Yes, and yeah, it's a product that I learned about, and it's called clingstone. And clingstone is this polymer liquid that pours out a little bit like honey, a thin honey. And so you have to very carefully apply it, and it will cover and coat all of the aggregate and then kind of drip through so that it solidifies everything in a solid honeycomb, and yet allows water to move through it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And Alice did add in the chat that there was a church at 4244 Southeast 91st that has a labyrinth specifically designed for wheelchairs and walkers. And Patricia, you had a question?
Yes. So I'm not sure it's as much of a question as a statement. You know, it was very interesting when we were working on the labyrinth that you did for my side yard. That whole question of will there be enough stones and where they're going to go. And I remember every morning we would come out there and go, are there enough? I don't know. And I think I learned something about that process of that you were talking about just kind of putting one stone out, one thing at a time, letting it evolve. And it was like the labyrinth, it's like the stones just called for their place on the labyrinth, and you would put them in, and that it was just a very fascinating fluid process, so different than figuring it out. I know you did a lot of figuring, but it was really kind of sensing where things went and sensing that there would be enough stones for everything. And it was a very different process than anything I'd ever built or had built. And it was, I love the process, and it really shows kind of that aspect of the labyrinth of just allowing it to be and come through. It was interesting, and I thank you for talking about that and all these different lessons.
Yes, working with stone is a very interesting process. I've done a lot with stone over the years, and sometimes you start with a big pile of stone, and then it becomes this beautiful dry stack basalt wall, and every stone finds its place, and you just trust that that's going to happen, and you work with material, and you quickly learn where they're going to fit and how you're going to work with them.
There was a question asking what is the size of Patricia's stone labyrinth? Do you know what the width is?
I believe that was 37 foot.
Yeah, about that.
37.
Because it has 17-inch paths, because you're walking between stones.
There's a question from Annette Goodman that she's an avid gardener, and the ice storm last winter took out 12 trees in her yard, and she's been heartbroken. And if she wanted to try to incorporate a labyrinth into her yard, where would she start?
Well, certainly when a client reaches out to me, or a potential client, I certainly like to have an on-site consultation so that we can look and walk and talk about the area that they may have in mind. You need to look at the slope. You need to look at how accessible it is in terms of how you're going to arrive at that space and be able to use it, how you're going to get material there to construct it. If there are trees that have come out and are going to be removed, then potentially you're removing stumps. And then you have to be very careful about soil compaction and backfill and grading, because settling does happen. That happened at the grotto. All of the base work was done before I ever built that kit, installed that kit, and I had to tell them that I couldn't guarantee things won't settle because I wasn't involved with any of that early work. And unfortunately, we did have some settling, and so I've had to be hired back to do some repairs for them over time. So it's really important when you take out stumps to make sure that you have an excavator and a contractor that knows how to get that base set. So there's a lot of things to consider in that particular setting, but certainly to walk and talk with somebody that knows how to design and construct labyrinths would be a good start.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to put your contact information in the chat later for them to get a hold of you.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that it might be about time to start to the experiential time, unless there are other questions waiting. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't have any more questions here.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you, Connie.
Sure.
So what we're going to do for this activity and closing meditation, and then again, we should have some time for a little bit more final sharing and questions. We're going to take a little finger labyrinth walk. So first, make sure that everybody's got their activity supplies at their fingertips. Could be a little rimmed cookie sheet or cake pan, something that can hold the lentils or the rice. If you don't have any of those items and you have a finger labyrinth handy, that's great, or a paper copy of the labyrinth that you can trace with your finger, anything will work. So now if everyone can light their candles, I'm going to grab my supplies. I got to move my phone here. So with your candle lit, this is going to be a reminder to us to focus on light amid the darkness as we journey inward with winter's coming darkness. I invite you to take stock in your many blessings and perhaps wonder about your next step on life's labyrinth. If you are inclined, you can write down some of your thoughts. Today, November 11th, is also the day that World War I ended in 1918. I would invite us to take this opportunity to reflect. The reflections will vary greatly according to your unique histories. Today is Veterans Day, Armistice Day, or Remembrance Day, depending on your country of origin. Take a few moments to look deeply into your candle and remember. If you are inclined, write down a name or names, past or present service members, whether relative or friend, whose lives were forever changed in conflicts around the world. Now, take the lentils, rice, or birdseed, whatever you have, and slowly pour them onto your rimmed cookie sheet. Gently smooth them out into an even layer in preparation for a finger labyrinth walk. As you are smoothing these out, perhaps these grains represent our collective humanity, past and present. Observing that we don't really ever walk alone. Breathe in and out our families and friends, our collective ancestors, remembering and honoring the told and untold journeys across time. Now let us take the next 5 minutes or so in silence as you guide your finger through the grains, creating a labyrinth path in its wake. Trusting that all labyrinth forms are okay. Let your thoughts and prayers guide your finger along your imagined healing path. You will be walking a labyrinth in your mind's eye. You can try out several different patterns if you like. My pan is small, so it's probably going to be a 3, maybe a 5 circuit. I'm lucky. It's okay to just meander. While you are doing this, breathe in and out with the ebb and flow of your emotions. Breathe in and out gratitude, courage, and sacrifice. Breathe in and out life's victories and defeats, celebrations, pain, and sorrow. As you journey towards a new tomorrow, remind yourself that we are all connected and your individual container of love is large enough for all that is. We are walking a path wide enough to carry us all. as I slowly bring us back out from our walks. We breathe in and out the past. We breathe in and out an unknown future. Breathe in and out to honor the present. Sowing seeds of peace in all that we are and all that we do. Namaste. If anyone would like to share any aha moments or thoughts from the Labyrinth walk experience or anything else, Connie will help facilitate those questions, comments. I needed a bigger pan to hold the amount of humanity that I poured into my pan.
Along with the Beck boys, I want to add Winnie Beck, mother of those Beck boys, who welcomed them home after World War II.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for that. I had a busy day and I was aware if it was Veterans Day, and it was such a nice time to be with my dad and to think about his service and his stories. Thank you. Mhm. I
When
did
you,
know that I remembered just about the whole Marine Corps song. That's what came to me.
when you asked us to write down names of people who were affected by the war, I just feel that my family's been very blessed in that we didn't really lose any members. You know, some people had some post-traumatic stress syndrome, but I had 7 uncles that were in the service for Canada and the United States, and they all came home. So I felt blessed when I wrote down the list. Does anybody else want to share something?
I'll just share, that was actually just a very peaceful exercise. It was kind of grounding, and just to stop and trace your outline, even if you didn't really end up into a shape of a labyrinth. Just doing that exercise with your finger, it was a calming exercise, I guess.
We have a comment that it was a nice tactile feeling of the rice, making it into the labyrinth pattern.
It was kind of fun not to have to stay in any lines. To kind of move to where you wanted to go. Well, Stephen, I really, do we have any more questions or anything, Connie?
No.
You're good?
And Stephen, I just want you to know that this is typical. As we sit here and take in everything that the speakers have told us, it just kind of puts us in a space that we don't talk a lot. So don't think that you didn't make an impact on us. It's just that we're kind of speechless right now.
Well, it was really fun to share my story and evolution of and with the Labyrinth. It certainly has been a companion and will continue to be. And I love the variety of ways in which it has expressed itself in my life and help ground me and heal me and inspire me. And so, yes, hopefully in and amongst all of the technology glitches that were unforeseen, because Patricia and I had a perfect, steady test drive of this, and there was no issue. So that's just life, and life along the twisting path. You don't know what's coming. All you can do is plan and then adapt and keep moving forward. So hopefully I didn't lose you, and that you did enjoy seeing all those different projects and the little nuggets of learning along the way. And but that's just the way I think about life, through a lot of mirrors and metaphors. And so it was fun to really put that together and share that with you all. So again, thank you all for staying with us this evening.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It was wonderful to watch and to think about all those metaphors. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. So we're just about out of time here. I just did want people to know that Jan is actually putting things up in chat. She put in Stephen's the link to your website, and if you just Google fertile ground, you have to put in the LLC, or you get to a lot of different things, and there's a direct link she's put up as well. And we've put up the information. So our next virtual walk is next Monday, the 15th at 7 p.m. You'll be getting some information about that. And then there's an in-person walk on the 22nd, I believe it is, on the next Monday. And then we're going to have an Advent icon walk where we dress up the Kempton Hall with icons and lights and dress up the labyrinth and walk for Advent. That's December 6th. And as I mentioned, Lauren Artris will be with us in February. So thank you so much, Stephen. I know they always take a lot more to put on than you think. And thank you so much for your wonderful pictures and wonderful personal stories. I have been, having that commitment to walk a labyrinth almost every day for a year, which is what I'm working on here. It gets a little wet at times during the winter seasons, but that's beautiful in its own right, to find a way to walk through everything and have it be. So thank you so much for all your words of wisdom.
Yes, you're welcome. Happy to have been able to share.
Any other final statements or questions?
Oh, I just wanted to say I got to walk the Franciscan Spiritual Center's Labyrinth last weekend, and it's a really beautiful pattern. Just the flow throughout the whole pattern is just really nice. It's stunning. It's really a lovely pattern.
Mhm. Now, where is that Franciscan Spiritual Center?
It's in Milwaukee.
It's in Milwaukee. Mhm.
Yeah, not too far, just across a park or schoolyard from the transit, Primat transit area. So it's just right in the old town area there.
Mhm. All right. Well, we tend to finish these. I'm going to unspotlight myself and Stephen. Let me see. And we can go on gallery view. Everybody can go on gallery view. And some people have, but even with people having their things turned off, why don't we reach our hands out to the side? Say hi to everybody. To the side of your screen. Touch everybody. To your Labyrinth friends. And wish everybody well. And go in Thanksgiving and in great interest for what will develop on the path. Thank you for coming. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you, that was a technological challenge. I'll be learning to try to figure out how to have managed that better. I didn't really know what to do to help you out. I think I did text a friend, and she suggested that that perhaps from the very beginning we should have had you reboot your sign off, reboot your
Yeah.
computer, and
Yeah,
mhm.
Yeah, reboot the Mac. It solves, with Apple products, it solves a lot when you reboot. A lot.
Mhm. But it all came together, you know, finally the rhythm, the technology was there, the rhythm came together, and it felt great. So thank you so much.
Good.
We got through it, and it was great. And I really think your message got across nicely. So
Good. Good.
thank you. Mhm.
Yes, well, look forward to the days again when we will be able to do these types of things in person,
Mhm.
and everybody in the same room, and just one set of technology that doesn't require to have this internet stuff. But it's yeah. Anyway, it is what it is.
I think that the storm and the rain and stuff didn't really help us tonight either.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you much, Lee. We'll talk to you soon. Bye all. I think I'm going to end.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.